Welcome to CBTV.
Please call me by my true names. I remember one day in the 1970s, while we were walking for the Vietnamese Buddhist police delegation in Paris, some terrible news came in. Many people had been fleeing Vietnam by boat, which was always a very dangerous journey. Not only were there the danger of storms and not having enough fuel, food or water, but also there was the risk of getting attacked by pirates who were active along the coast of Thailand. The story we heard was tragic. Pirates had boarded the boat, stolen valuables and fled. 11 years ago, when his father tried to intervene, his were thrown overboard. After the attack, the girl threw herself overboard too. Both perished in the sea. After I heard this news, I couldn't sleep. The feeling of sadness, compassion, and pity were very strong. But as a practitioner, we cannot let the feelings of anger and helplessness paralyze us. So I practice walking meditation, sitting meditation, and mindful breathing to look more deeply into the situation, to try to understand. I visualize myself as a little boy born into a poor family in Thailand. My father's an illiterate fisherman. From one generation to the next, my ancestors had lived in poverty, without education, without help. I too grew up without an education, and perhaps with violence. Then one day, someone asked me to go out to sea and make a fortune as a pirate, and I foolishly agreed, desperate to finally break out of this terrible cycle of poverty. And then, under pressure from my fellow pirates, and with no coastal patrol to stop me, I forced myself on a beautiful young girl. My whole life I have never been taught how to love or understand. I never received an education. Nobody showed me a future. If you had been there on the boat with a gun, you could have shot me. You could have killed me. But you wouldn't have been able to help me. Meditating that night in Paris, I saw that hundreds of babies continue to be born under similar circumstances, and that they will grow up to be pirates unless I do something now to help them. I saw all of this, and my anger disappeared. My heart was full of the energy of compassion and forgiveness. I could embrace not only the 11 years old girl in my arms, but also the pirate. I could see myself in them. This is the fruit of the contemplation on emptiness, on interbeing. I could see that suffering is not only individual, it is also collective. Suffering can be transmitted to us by our ancestors, or it can be there in the society around us. As my blame and hatred dissipated, I became determined to live our life in such a way that I could help not only the victims but also the perpetrators. So, if you call me Thich Nhat Hanh, I will say, yes, that is me. And if you call me the young girl, I will say, yes, that is me. If you call me the pirate, I will also say, yes, that is me. These are all my true names. If you call me an impoverished child in a war zone with no future, I will say, yes, that is me. And if you call me the arms merchant selling weapons to support that war, I will say, yes, that is me. All of these peoples are us. We interact with everyone. When we can free ourselves from the idea of separateness, we have compassion, we have understanding, and we have the energy we need to have. Two levels of truth. In everyday language, we say you and I and we and they, because these designations are useful. They identify who and what we are talking about. But it is important to realize they are not only conventional designations. They are only relative truths, not the ultimate truth. We are so much more than these labels and categories. It is impossible to draw a hard line between you and I and the rest of the cosmos. The insight of interbeing helps us connect with the ultimate truth of emptiness. The teaching on emptiness is not about the dying of the self. The self does not need to die. The self is just an idea, an illusion, a wrong view, a notion. It is not reality. How can something that is not there die? We do not need to kill the self, but we can remove the illusion of a separate self by gaining a deeper understanding of reality. No honor, no pause. When we think of ourselves as having a separate self, a separate existence, we identify with our thoughts and our body. We have the impressions that we are the boss or owners of our body. We might think, this is my body or this is my mind, in the same way we might think, this is my house, this is my car, these are my qualifications, these are my feelings, these are my emotions, this is my suffering. In fact, we should not be so sure. When we think or walk or breathe, many of us believed there must be a person, an actor behind our actions. We believe there must be someone doing the action. But when the wind blows, there is no blower behind the wind. There is only the wind. And if it does not blow, it is not the wind at all. When we say it is raining, there does not need to be a rainer in order to have the rain. Who is the it that is raining? There is only raining. Raining is happening. In the same way, outside of our actions, there is no person, no thing we can call ourselves. When we think, we are our thinking. When we walk, we are the walking. When we breathe, we are the breathing. When we act, we are our actions. I remember once seeing a cartoon depicting the French philosopher René Descartes standing in front of a horse. Descartes was pointing his finger up in the air, declaring, I think before I am. Behind him, the horse was wondering, therefore, you are what? Descartes was trying to demonstrate that a self exists. Because, according to his logic, if I am thinking, then there must be a me that exists in order to do the thinking. If I'm not there, then who is thinking? We cannot deny that there is thinking. It is clear that thinking is taking place. Most of the time, the problem is that too much thinking is taking place. Thinking about yesterday, worrying about tomorrow, and all of this thinking takes us away from ourselves and from the here and now. When we are caught up in thinking about the past and the future, our mind is not with our body. It is not in contact with the life within us and around us in the present moment. So it might be more accurate to say, I think too much, therefore I am not there to live my life. The most accurate way to describe the process of thinking is not that there's someone thinking, but that thinking is manifesting as the result of a remarkable, wondrous coming together of conditions. We do not need to have a self in order to think. There is thinking and only thinking. There is not an additional separate entity doing the thinking. Insofar as they are thinker, the thinker comes into existence at the same time as the thinking. It is like the left and the right. You cannot have the one without the other, but you also cannot have the one before the other. They manifest at the same time. As soon as they are left, there is also right. As soon as there are thought, there's a thinker. The thinker is the thinking. The same is true with the body in action. Millions of neurons work together in our brain. in constant communication. They act in concert, producing a movement, a feeling, a thought, or a perception. Yet, there is no conductor of the orchestra. There is no pause, making all the decisions. We cannot locate a place in the brain or anywhere else in the body that is controlling everything. They are the actions of thinking, feeling, and perceiving. But there is no actor or separate cell entirely doing the thinking, feeling, and perceiving. In 1966, in London, I had a very powerful existence contemplating a corpse in the British Museum. It had been naturally preserved in sand, lying in the fetal position for more than 5,000 years. I stood there for a long time, very concentrated, contemplating the body. A few weeks later, in Paris, I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night and wanted to touch my leg to check that I had not become a corpse like that. It was 2 o'clock, and I sat up. I contemplated the corpse and my own body. After sitting for about an hour, I felt like water running down on a mountain, washing. Finally, I got up and wrote a poem. I called it The Great Lion's Roar. The feeling was so clear, and the images flow freely. They gush out like a huge water container being overturned. The poem opened with these lines. A white cloud floats in the sky. A pocket of flower blooms. Floating clouds, blooming flowers. The clouds are the floating. The flowers. The clouds are the floating. The flowers are the blooming. I saw very clearly that if a cloud is not floating, it is not a cloud. If a flower is not blooming, it is not a flower. Without floating, there is no cloud. Without blooming, there is no flower. We cannot separate the two. You cannot take the mind out of the body, and you cannot take the body out of the mind. They interact. Just as we find the flower in the blooming, we find a human being in the energy of action. If there's no energy of actions, there's no human being. As the French existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, sorry for my French, famously said, man is the sum of his actions, or the sum of everything we think, say, and do. Just as an orange tree produces beautiful blossoms, leaves, and fruit, so do we produce thinking, speech, and action. And just like the orange tree, our actions are always ripening over time. We can find ourselves only in our actions of body, speech, and mind, continuing as energy across space and time.